There we go. Okay, Shavua Tov, everyone. Chodesh Tov.
Johnny, I've been trying to find out, Johnny, about Jonathan and Yehonatan.
Yeah.
And I can't see anything special. There's something about Radak mentions it, so maybe David might know more about it.
Okay, we'll give David some homework to do then for next week.
Well, Rabbi Yoel Lieberman, I think it was, said that it's important if your name's Jonathan, you should stick with it, and if it's Yehonatan, you should stick with it, because that's what your parents wanted you to be called.
Okay, or in my case, it's neither. So.
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah. Okay.
Okay, right, very good.
You said on your ID card you had Jonathan.
I've got Jonathan on my Tzudat Zot,
Yeah.
without a hey. But that is not my Shem Kodesh, as it were. Right. On Wednesday last week in the Gemara Shir, I said we were going off to learn some Tanakh. So today I thought it's only fair in the Tanakh Shir if we go off and learn some Gemara, which is what may well happen as we go along. So let's have a look and see what is going on in our Shoftim, in our Shmuel Aleph. I need to get it on the screen for you. Give me a sec. Shmuel Aleph, chapter 14. Where is it? We left off last week. There it is. We should have it on the screen in a sec. Let me know when it arrives, please. Yeah, okay, there we go. So Shmuel Aleph, chapter 14. The bit that we left off was that Jonathan and his caddy, his armor bearer, did you manage to listen to it, Leon? Last week's shir? It was all for you, all about the caddy, the golf caddy.
Yes, I was actually there last week.
Oh, you were, right, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we were talking about the caddy, Jonathan and his caddy, and they went out without the knowledge of the king. And the indication was that they did that, or Jonathan did it anyway, because he was not impressed with his father's inactivity, indecisive approach, and he took matters into his own hand, as it were, and decided to go and approach the Philistines, the Philistines. And so here we get to the situation. They went up between the crags from Michmash and Geva. Let's see if we can get the map up again. 1 second. There's our map. There it is. There's the map of Michmash. Oh, don't want that. Thank you. Where's it gone? Right, oh, it doesn't like it. 1 sec, let me try and get it again. We'll use this one. You can see on over here, Michmash, there's Geva, there's Jonathan, Shaul is in Giva, just over to the left-hand side, to the west. And so Jonathan approaches Michmash. Let's go back to the Sukkim, and he'd gone between the crags. Let's go from verse 5, Leon.
One precipice jutted out on the north, facing Michmash, and the other was on the south, facing Geva. Jonathan said to the attendant, his armor bearer, "Come, let us cross over to the garrison of these uncircumcised ones. Perhaps Hashem will act on our behalf. for nothing prevents Hashem from saving, whether through many or through few. His armor bearer said to him, do whatever is in your heart. Choose your direction. I am with you as you desire.
Okay, let's just stop there for a sec. And that's where we got to at the end of last week. And we commented that this was very similar in a way to Shaul when he was looking for the donkeys. Only the difference was that it was the servant that was the one that gave the idea and Shaul was the one that followed. Here, Jonathan is clearly the leader and the armor bearer says, I'll do whatever you want. Now, what we see next is that Jonathan sets up a sign. He asks for a sign from the heavens, as it were, to tell him whether he's doing the right thing in approaching the Plishtim. Remember, there's just him and one other person. And we know how many Philistines there are, don't we? Philip, how many Philistines are there in this garrison here? You're muted, Philip. Come on, see if you've been paying attention.
30,000?
30,000 chariots, that's right. So therefore, presumably, we've got 30,000 charioteers and 6,000...
no, you'd have double the number of charioteers. You'd have 60,000 because the chariot team was
charioteers, 60,000 charioteers, 6,000 elite troops, and then it said a whole bunch more. Again, it's not that
it's
number.
It's so wrong. It can't be right, Johnny.
No,
it can't be right.
We know it's not right.
Yeah,
and it's just telling us that there were a lot. So there were a lot of them, and there's Jonathan and one other person, his armor bearer. What kind of chance does he have in this scenario? I would say less than zero. So Jonathan sets a sign. He asks God for a sign to say whether he's doing the right thing. Let's carry on. Verse 8, Leon, please.
Jonathan said, behold, we are crossing over to the men, and we will show ourselves to them. If they say this to us, halt until we reach you, we will stay where we are and not go up to them. But if they say this, come up to us, then we will go up, for Hashem will have delivered them into our hand, and that will be our sign.
Okay, let's stop there. So what is going on here? Jonathan says, I need a sign from God to see whether I'm doing the right thing or not. And he sets a sign and he says, when they spot us, we'll come out from our hiding places. Remember, they'd been jigging and jagging in between the rocks, hiding themselves as they approach the garrison. Their plan is to come out into the open, and if the sentries of the Plishtim say, halt, stop, wait where you are, we're coming down to check you out, they'll just stay there and they won't go and fight. But if they say, come up to us, then that will be a sign from Hashem that he has given them into our hand, that we are going to be victorious against the Plishtim. What does that remind you of? Anyone? David?
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of the story with Jonathan and David on Rosh Chodesh, when he says, depending on which directions the arrows go, is going to be a sign whether or not it's safe for you to return back to Shaul's palace.
Okay, I'm not so sure that is the same. I'll tell you why I don't think that's the same, David. Just to fill in a little bit more detail there, some of you will be familiar with that story because it's the story that we read every time Rosh Chodesh is on a Sunday, Machar Chodesh. It's the story where David is running away from Saul, and Jonathan is warning him whether it's safe or not. This was a sign, David, that between Jonathan and David, they had initiated a sign between them. So this here is different. Jonathan is not even asking God, can I have a sign? He's telling God,
Yeah.
I want a sign. God hasn't had anything to do with this. So where else in the Torah, there's a clue, do we have somebody asking God for a sign? Here's another clue, to see whether his mission is successful.
Eliezer.
Eliezer, correct. Let's go, Leon, to Bereshit, chapter 41. It's in Parshat Miketz. No, rubbish. Go to chapter 39.
Yep.
Chapter 39.
No, it's in
No, that's
Chai.
either.
It's
No,
in
that's
Chai
another thing I'm
Sorah.
coming to. It's in chapter 24. I beg your pardon. I've got 3 lots of Bereshit ready for this Shia, and I've gone to the wrong ones, working my way backwards. It's in Chai Sorah, correct? Chapter 24.
Yes, I have it.
Okay, so have a look at verse 14. Well, even though, go a bit further back. Let's go to verse 13.
See, I stand here by the spring of water, and the daughters of the townsmen come out to draw. Let it be that the maiden to whom I shall say, please tip over your jug, excuse me, please tip over your jug so I may drink. And who replies, drink, and I will even water your camels. Her will you have designated for your servant, for Isaac. And may I know through her that you have done kindness with my master.
Okay, so this is Eliezer. Eliezer, the servant of Abraham, was sent on a mission. Go and find a wife for Yitzchak in my hometown. Eliezer doesn't know who he's going to find, and he sets a sign. He says, there's a sign. If this happens, then I will know that this is a sign from God that this is the right girl for Yitzchak. So what happens is, as we know, carry on, Leon, verse 15.
And it was when he had not yet finished speaking that suddenly Rebekah was coming out. She who had been born to Bethuel, the son of Milcah, the wife of Nahor, brother of Abraham, with her jug upon her shoulder. Now the maiden was very fair to look upon, a virgin whom no man had known. She descended to the spring, filled her jug, and ascended. The servant ran towards her and said, let me sip, if you please, a little water from your jug. She said, drink, my lord. And quickly she lowered her jug to her hand and gave him drink. When she finished giving him drink, she said, I will draw water even for your camels until they have finished drinking.
Okay, let's stop there. So what happened was, immediately after Eliezer sets the sign, God brings Rivkah, and the sign is fulfilled. And what do we say about that? We say, isn't that amazing? Oh, wonderful. Eliezer sets a sign, God gives him the sign. Everyone knows now Rivkah is the right one for Yitzchak. So, on the face of it, is that a reasonable thing to do? Are we allowed to set signs for God to follow? In other words, I'll say, if such and such a thing happens today, then I will do. It will be a sign from God that I am meant to do such and such. I don't know. If I find a 10 shekel piece on the floor this morning when I go out for a walk, it's a sign from Hashem that I should travel to Yerushalayim and go to the Kotel and give that 10 shekels to stock at the Kotel. Am I allowed to make such a sign? Does anybody have an opinion on that? Philip says no. No, you don't have an opinion, or no, you're not allowed.
No, you're not allowed.
Okay, Johnny says you're not allowed. Why, Johnny? Why are you not allowed to do that?
Well, because everything's, I believe, is everything's predestined anyhow. So what happens, happens. You can't try and foretell the future yourself.
Okay. And whatever happens, happens. So why did Eliezer do it then?
Well, I'm not Abraham, let's put it that way. So
Okay,
I didn't take.
So some people are allowed to do it because they are Abraham.
Special.
It does go on to say, Johnny, that the man was astonished, according to the translation. Eliezer was astonished.
Right. So that means that he wasn't expecting it to be fulfilled.
Well, not immediately.
So why did he? Okay. So he was astonished about the speed. He can't have been astonished about it being allowed, or else he wouldn't have done it. So there's no point saying something if you don't believe it's going to happen. So he was astonished at the speed that it happened. Okay. Now, so there's a pasuk in the Torah in Vayikra, which says, "You shall not." Where is it? Here we go. It's in chapter 19 of Vayikra, in Parashat Kedoshim. We're going to read it in a couple of weeks' time.
I have it.
We go. It's a whole bunch of different laws, which are not relevant until we get to verse 31.
Do not turn to the sorcery of the Ovos and Yidonim, and do not seek to be contaminated through them. I am Hashem, your God.
Okay, do not. Here it says, "You shall not turn to the sorcery of Ovo Yidoni." So this is the source, if you pardon the pun, not the source as in sorcery, source as in with a U. This is the source of the prohibition against superstitions and against charms and the like. Okay, lucky charms, all this stuff that the Sephardim do, chamsa, 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 chamsa. It's all very dodgy according to halakha. We're not meant to have lucky charms. We're not meant to turn to any kind of superstitions. I guess that's partly what Johnny is saying. We've got to rely on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You're not meant to try and change destiny by turning to sorcery. And this is a halacha in the Torah. Okay, so
it's like saying if I don't find the 10 shekel piece in the morning, I'm not going to daven today.
Okay, that's a sort of an opposite way of saying it. And you're not meant to do that. Michael Krause is shaking his head. Michael, tell us what you're thinking.
What he was doing doesn't appear to be sorcery. He's just asking for a sign, not sorcery.
Okay, so okay, fair comment. Let me take you now to the Gemara. So now I'm making up for taking you from the Gemara to Tanakh. I'm now taking you from Tanakh to Gemara. Yes, David, before I do so.
Sorry, Johnny, I think you want to look back a few psukim to pasuk 26. We're talking here about Lot and Nachashu.
Okay, yes, you're right. That's also part of it, probably more relevant. Verse 26, thank you, David. Leon, verse 26.
You shall not eat over the blood, you shall not indulge in sorcery, and you shall not believe in lucky times.
Okay, so again, now that's part of the same thing, probably more relevant. Lot nachashu is the Hebrew word. Do not divination, it's called in English, apparently. Where have you heard that word tenachashu before?
From a serpent from Moshe.
Correct, nachash. And what is
Nachash.
a serpent? A serpent is a slippery, wily, sly sort of character. So it's definitely the same root. We have a story in Tanakh, in the Torah, of somebody who who uses this expression. What am I thinking of?
Ken?
What am I thinking of? Anyone? It's in Sefer Bereshit. Yes, David.
Well, no, the most famous one is in Parshas Bolok with Bilam. Says Kilo Nachash Yisrael. The one you're referring to, so that there is no divination or any of this black magic stuff in Israel. So this is where Bilam is complimenting Israel, obviously with God putting words into his mouth. Ki nachesh yinachesh is in the story of Joseph and his brothers in Parshas.
Yes, that's the one I was thinking of. That's the one I was thinking of. Joseph and his brothers. Joseph puts the goblet in Binyamin's sack. You remember that story? And he comes back and he said, they come back, they slap him all back and he accuses him of stealing it. And he says to them, are you stupid? Why did you steal my special goblet? This is the goblet with which I do my divination. And they use that word nachash, tenachesh. So yes, that's the pasuk there. Thank you for that, David. So that those two ideas together, you're not allowed to have lucky omens, chamsa, chamsa, chamsa. You're not meant to have superstitions. So, you know, or those of you who have the misfortune like me to watch football on the telly, every time I watch my team do badly, I say I'm not doing it again, and I still do it. There's got to be there's an illness for that. There's probably a cure for it. I don't know what it is. But anyway, you see these footballers, they run onto the ground and they touch the grass and they kiss it and they cross themselves like they're the biggest frummers out. This is all superstition. Many stories of people with, you know, lucky cricket bats, and people never change their underpants for 6 months because of their lucky undies and they haven't lost a match in that, all that kind of nonsense. You're not allowed to do that. So Michael Krauss says that this is not divination. This is just asking for a sign from God. Okay. If there is a difference, I agree. But the Gemara, and that's where we were just going to go to before David corrected me and put me on the right pasuk there. The Gemara that I wanted to show you is in Chulin 95b, and it should be on the screen for you in a second. It's loading. There we go. So now
what is Chulin?
Chulin is a Gemara, Masechet Chulin. It's a Gemara, and it's dealing with the laws of kashrut. It's where we see all the halachot of how to shecht an animal. Okay, if you look in the Torah, it's a good trick question for somebody. Where in the Torah does it tell you how to shecht an animal with a windpipe in one go and carotid arteries and all that lot with a chalaf, and how sharp it's got to be and all that stuff? Where does it say in the Torah how to shecht an animal? The answer is it doesn't. Okay, it's a good trick question if you want to ask somebody, right? It doesn't. All it says in the Torah is you have to shecht it in the way that I have commanded you, but it doesn't tell you what that way is. Now, how do we know? Because it's part of the oral law, part of the Torah Shebaal Peh. It's passed on from generation to generation until the details were written down in Masechet Chulin. So Chulin is a Masechet that deals with mainly with shchita and kashrut and things like that. But as is the Gemara's way, it goes off in all sorts of different tangents. And one of the tangents it goes off at here in 95b is a question here that the Gemara asks. Doesn't Rav say, in other words, this is Rav saying, any divination that is not like the divination of Eliezer, the servant of Abraham, when he went to seek a bride for Isaac, or like the divination of Jonathan, son of Saul, who sought an omen as to whether he and his arms bearer would defeat the Philistines, that's our psukim that we've just done, is not divination. So in other words, Rav says the only thing that is called divination is stuff like Eliezer did and like Jonathan did. And so you're not allowed to do divination. So what Rav is saying, it doesn't matter why he was saying it, it was all to do with whether he should eat meat or he shouldn't eat this meat. What Rav was saying with this statement, that the only type of divination which is forbidden is the kind of divination that Eliezer and Jonathan did. Okay, so that's the Gemara there in Chulin speaks about this divination, and then there's a whole machloket there amongst the Rishonim as to what Rav is talking about, because on the face of it, Rav seems to be saying that you can do all sorts of funny monkey business as long as you don't do what Eliezer did or you don't do what Jonathan did. That's how it seems to read. But what Rashi and Tosfot understand is the exact opposite. You have a look at Rashi and Tosfot on this Gemara. We're not going to do that because it's not Gemara shit. Just wanted to point it out to you. If you have a look, Rashi and Tosfot say the opposite. Rashi and Tosfot agree with Michael Krauss, and they say that what Rav meant was that these types of divination, where they were asking for a sign from God for a particular action, is not forbidden. These are the only things that are not forbidden. So anything that is like this is okay. The various other commentators go against that. So, for example, the Rambam says that all of these things are forbidden, including the things that Eliezer did. Rambam would not be impressed with Eliezer's actions and says we should not be doing that. The Ravad disagrees vehemently with the Rambam and says that's absolutely permitted. Anything that, like Eliezer did or what Jonathan did, is actually completely permitted. And how dare, and this is an interesting expression of the Ravad. The Ravad says, how dare the Rambam criticize Eliezer and Yehonatan ben Shaul? How dare he? And he says, if they were here, they would strike him with lashes of fire. So that's the Ravad having a real good go at the Rambam, which shows that if you have a disagreement with somebody about a matter of Torah, then people got very het up about these things, even back then in the time of the Rambam and the Ravad. So it's very interesting because the Rabbi Yosef Karo, who knows who Rabbi Yosef Karo was?
Did he write a Shulchan Aruch? No?
He did write the Shulchan Aruch.
Yeah.
He also wrote something else. He wrote well, quite a few other things. One of the things he wrote was a commentary. He wrote a commentary on the Rambam, and that was called. Anybody know what that was called? What was Rambam's magnum opus called? Mishneh Torah. Mishneh Torah was a Rambam's magnus opus. That was where he went through the whole of the of all the mitzvot, And Rabbi Yosef Karo, the author of the Shulchan Aruch, which is what he's most famous for, wrote a commentary on the Mishnah Torah, and that was called, anybody know what it was called? David, do you know what it was called?
It's escaped me.
Kesef Mishnah. It was called. It was called the Kesef Mishnah. And people often refer to Rabbi Yosef Karo as the Kesef Mishnah, in the same way as people refer to Rabbi Yisrael Meir Karelitz, a Kohen, as the
Chofetz Chaim.
Chofetz Chaim, because he wrote a book called the Chofetz Chaim. So often people are called by the names of their books that they wrote. And Rabbi Yosef Karo is not known as the Shulchan Aruch. He's known as the Kesef Mishnah often. So, and that's because he wrote this. Anyway, he writes that the Rambam's position is this. It's a gloss on the Rambam. He says that the Rambam's position is this: that when a person conditions his actions on a sign that reason does not suggest is indicative of benefit to them, that's forbidden. But if a sign comes which is indicative of some benefit to them, that is perfectly permissible, and we all do it all the time, don't we? So, for example, if we are planning a trip to, I don't know, let's say we're planning a trip to the north. And if you say, well, if in the morning the sun's shining, I'm going to go. And if it's raining, I'm not going to go. Would that be forbidden? No, says the Kesef Mishnah. That's perfectly normal. You give yourself a sign because that sign is indicating some benefit to you. If it's sunny, then it's going to be a nice day out. If it's raining, then it's going to be horrible. Why would you want to go out for the day if it's raining? So the Rambam, according to the Kesef Mishnah, is saying that it's only forbidden if there's no benefit to it. So in other words, if I say, if in the morning I wake up and the first item on the news that I hear is that man has discovered a new antibiotic, then I'm going to go for my day trip to the north. One thing's got nothing to do with the other. There's no benefit in that to my trip to the north. That would not be allowed. And it would be a non sequitur. And it's a bit like, it's not quite the same, but it's a bit like Yiftach. What did Yiftach do? Yiftach made a ridiculous promise. Remember what was Yiftach's ridiculous promise? Yiftach, who was one of the Shoftim, he made a promise.
He sacrificed his daughter if he won. He sacrificed the first person he saw coming out from his house or from where he lived.
Right. Not the first person, but the first thing. Yeah, he said that whatever is the first thing that comes out of my house when I come back from my victorious battle, I will sacrifice to the Lord. And he didn't expect it would be his daughter. He thought it would be some kind of animal that he would see first, and he would sacrifice that to God. And it was his daughter, and then the whole story about why he did not go and undo his promise. That's another issue. So here, what the Kesef Mishnah, Rabbi Yosef Karo, is saying is that, and it's important that we know what the Rabbi Yosef Karo says, because of course he is the author of the Shulchan Aruch after all. And he says that the Rambam's view is that if there is some benefit to this sign, then it's okay. Now, let's apply that rule to Eliezer. Of course, there was some benefit to that. It showed that Rivka was kind, and that was what he was trying to find out. So it was a perfectly reasonable thing to say. If a girl comes out and she shows by doing this that she's a very kind girl, then that's the kind of girl I want for Yitzchak. Yonatan, on the other hand, we need to have a look and see what was the potential benefit. Let's go back to our psukim and see what Jonathan says. Jonathan says, the sign will be, if they say, wait there, we're coming to you, then we're not going to fight. But if they say, come up to us, then I'm going to fight. That will be a sign. Now, according to the Kesef Mishnah, there had to be some benefit to that sign for Jonathan, for it to be a valid thing to do, to ask for that sign. What, I'm going to ask Philip this question because he's our military expert. Philip, what potential benefit can you see from the sign that Jonathan requests, which is that the Plishtim will not say, wait there, we're coming to you, but will invite them up to them?
I don't know. This could be a tactical decision to try and make peace with the Plishtim, or it could be a tactical decision which would be a very unwise one to act like commandos and attack them.
You're looking at it from Jonathan's perspective. I want you to look at it from the Plishtim's perspective. What might the Plishtim be thinking by saying, wait there,
that the Jews want to surrender, that the Jews want to surrender.
Ah, okay, excellent, excellent. So Jonathan says, the sign I'm looking for is that the Plishtim will say, come up to us. And Jonathan is saying, if they say, wait there, I'm coming to you, they don't trust me. They want me out of the camp and they're coming to me. And I'm just going to stand there in my place. That's what it says. I'm not going to fight. But if they say, okay, come up to me, the implication in Jonathan's mind is that the Plishtim think I'm coming to surrender.
Yeah.
Because they can, in other words, they're going to be complacent. They think that they don't think I'm going to come to fight. I'm going to have the big element of surprise. So that's exactly right, Philip. That's exactly what Jonathan's thoughts were, that he thinks, this will be a sign. If they say to me, come up, that means they're expecting me to surrender. I can take them by surprise. I can do some damage and I can have a victory. Okay.
But he's committing suicide. He would be committing suicide anyway, even if he was going to ambush them because he's so outnumbered.
Well, not necessarily, Philip, because look at what he says. Look at what he says. He says it's a sign. And what does he go earlier on? Let's just go back to verse 6, Leon, please.
Jonathan said to the attendant, his armor bearer, come, let us cross over to the garrison of these uncircumcised ones. Perhaps Hashem will act on our behalf, for nothing prevents Hashem from saving, whether through many or through few.
No, in fact, what he's
I'm sorry, Johnny, I'm a little bit skeptical about that. I'm sorry, I can't help it.
Okay,
but I don't think...
All that says, Philip, is that you're not a man of faith, whereas Jonathan was, that's all. Okay?
Okay.
If I were you, I'd quit while you're ahead. You were doing fine till then.
Okay.
So what Jonathan is saying is that I just need a sign, God. I know that you can do whatever you want, even with a few people. We looked at it a bit last time with the story of Gideon. Remember, Gideon went with just 100 people into the Midianites, if I'm not mistaken, and they all ran away because they were scared of just a few people. So Jonathan is saying, well, if I get the sign, God, I'm willing to put my faith in you, that you will be able to save the people, even with a few, even with just me and the armor bearer. So that's the sign that he's looking for. And the sign, according to the Kesef Mishnah, has to be something sensible that potentially has benefit for him. And so Philip's approach, which says they say, come up to us because they think he's going to surrender. And if you think they're going to surrender, then you drop your guard. You know, you're no longer on such a heightened approach. You're not going to be so worried that you're going to be attacked. And that will give Jonathan the opportunity to do some damage. And then, as it were, the rest is up to God. I will have done my Nachshon ben Aminadav trick. I will have jumped into the water up to my nose, as it were. That's the equivalent. And God can then do the rest. That's Jonathan's thinking here, according to the Kesef Mishnah, according to Rabbi Yosef Karo. So according to Rabbi Yosef Karo, there's no problem with Jonathan's sign, because we're dealing essentially with an assessment based on logical assumptions and unconnected. And this is the issue. And that's why I said the pasuk that I said, even though David's pasuk was more correct, unconnected to any kind of mystical, bits and pieces of superstition and mystical influences and all that kind of thing. So according to him, the sign was based on the fact that the Plishtim would say, stay down there, I don't trust you, we're coming to you, I'm not letting you in. He stays put. But if they say, come up to us, then that would prove that they are lowered their guard and they are in a weaker position. So on rational grounds, we can explain it. Okay.
Johnny,
it's a bit like you would say today. I'm sure Philip would agree. If you see the enemy coming, the first thing you say to them is, halt, stop. And then you make an assessment, okay, of whether you're going to just shoot them or whether you're going to engage with them in any kind of...
or whether you're going to retreat.
Or whether you're going to retreat. So let's see what actually happened.
So Johnny,
David, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I've just found something. Radak on the spot here says that if it's something that's totally unrelated to the event, then it's nichush, and he actually gives an example. If you're going to do something conditional on a chicken crossing the road, then that's nichush. But if it's something like we've got here that's totally related to the potential conflict between the Jewish people and the Plishtim, then that can't be regarded as nichush. One question that's posed by Tosfos on that Gemara in Chulin, of course, it is the example of Eliezer, a correct example, because Eliezer was a Nochri, who's a non-Jew, and Tosfos asked whether nichush actually applies to non-Jews.
Right, okay, that's a fair question. It's not one of the 7 mitzvot b'nei Noach.
No.
Although I suppose you could say it was a subcategory of setting up a justice system. No, I don't know, probably not. It's a fair question. What's Tosfos' answer?
Well, he presents another view that says that he didn't rely on this one sign, that he still met with Lavan, he still met with the parents, and at the end of the story, the parents asked Rivka whether she indeed wanted to go with Eliezer and marry Yitzchak. So it wasn't the be-all and end-all, the sign that was shown to Eliezer. That's the get-out clause.
Okay, that's interesting. That's interesting. Okay, so the Radak appears to take a similar view to the Rambam, and takes a similar view to the Kesef Mishnah on the Rambam, and it makes sense. It makes sense. So there we now have another answer to the famous question: why did the chicken cross the road? In order so that somebody could do something completely unrelated. Interesting that the Radak chose a chicken crossing the road as the completely unrelated matter. Excellent. Right. Where were we? Let's go and see exactly what happened in our story. So, what did the Plishtim actually say? Where did we get to? We got to
verse 11.
Verse 11. We got to verse 11.
So the two of them showed themselves to the Philistine garrison, and the Philistines said, "Look, the Hebrews are emerging from the holes where they were hiding." The men of the garrison...
Stop there, Leon. I want to dissect this pasuk. Vayiglu shnehem el matzav plishtim, and the two of them revealed themselves. They revealed their whereabouts. it doesn't mean that they undressed. It means that they revealed where they were. Vayomru plishtim, and the plishtim said, Hine ivrim. Here are Hebrews. Why did they use that expression, Hebrews? What does the word ivrim conjure up when you see it in Tanakh, usually? When you see the word Hebrew like that, used by non-Israelis, non-Bnei Israel, what does it indicate, that expression usually in Tanakh?
Strangers or refugees or Ivrim that passed over, that come in.
Okay.
Enemies.
Yeah, you're right. Over means to pass over.
Yeah.
Ivri, the original Ivri was Abraham, who was Aver Hanahar. He came from the other side.
Yeah.
It's an expression which denotes the otherness of the Jews. In other words, we are not like them. Okay? Ivrim. Who was called an Ivri in Tanakh? We've said Abraham was called an Ivri. Who else was called an Ivri?
Yosef.
Yosef. And that's where I was taking you to earlier on, where I was in Bereshit Leon, chapter 39, in Parashat Vayeshev. That was one that I got ready for you. Who calls Yosef an Ivri? Two people call Yosef an Ivri.
Potiphar's wife.
Yes, Potiphar's wife calls him Ivri. Let's do that one first.
Yeah.
So we know the story. Verse, have you got it, Leon?
Yes.
Bereshit 39, verse 12, please.
But she caught hold of him by his garment, saying, "Lie with me." But he left his garment in her hand, and he fled and went outside.
We're talking about Yosef, of course.
When she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and fled outside, she called out to the men of her household and spoke to them, saying, "Look, he brought us a Hebrew man to sport with us. He came to lie with me, but I called out with a loud scream."
Okay, so there we go. Hevilanu ish ivri. It's a derogatory term. It's a derogatory term. They brought this Ivri, this Jew boy, right?
A lot of this happens today. A lot of this happens in the
yes,
modern world.
there's many expressions today which mean Jew and are derogatory. And in the Tanakh, usually when it uses the word Ivri, it is derogatory. Here's the second time that Yosef is called an Ivri. Who was it that called him an Ivri the second time?
Probably Pharaoh.
Not Pharaoh, no, but you were close.
One of the Sarim, one of the guys who
Well done, Philip. You're on fire today. Correct.
Yeah, I know.
It was the Sar HaMashkim, the chief butler.
Yeah. The one who survived, not the other one. Yeah.
The one that survived, that's right. Let's have a look in chapter 41 of Bereshit, Leon, please. Chapter 41. Pharaoh has dreams. This is the beginning of Parshat Miketz. Pharaoh has dreams. He doesn't know what to do with them. What happens is verse 9, please.
Then the chamberlain of the cupbearer spoke up before Pharaoh. "My transgressions do I mention today. Pharaoh had become incensed at his servants and placed me in the ward of the house of the chamberlain of the butchers, me and the chamberlain of the bakers. We dreamt a dream on the same night, I and he. Each of us according to the interpretation of his dream did we dream. And there with us was a Hebrew youth, a slave of the chamberlain of the butchers. We related it to him, and he interpreted our dreams for us. He interpreted for each in accordance with his dream."
Okay, stop there. And the Mefarshim say on that pasuk, I think Rashi says, if I'm not mistaken, now they say to these, remember, he was meant to have mentioned this to Pharaoh 2 years earlier. At the end of the previous parsha, Joseph had said to him, when you get out, remember me to Pharaoh and get me out of this place. And he didn't. It took 2 years before he did so. And the reason was that the chief butler was not a great fan of the Jews. So even when he's giving Pharaoh this information, he's disparaging Yosef. Look what he says. He says, V'sham itanu, there with us, in prison. So the first thing he's saying is this kid was in prison. Na'ar, he was a youth. He was Na'ar. And we all know what a Na'ar is. A Na'ar is somebody who talks narishkeit, right, Philip? So he's saying this is now.
You never miss a chance, do you? You never miss a chance.
Never miss a chance. I try not to. And so he's disparaging. And then he says, Ivri. He's an Ivri. He's one of those who doesn't keep to the laws of you. He's Aver. He's an opposite. He's an other. He's not one of us. He's nicht von unserer. Eved. He's a servant. He was a servant. So he's really sticking the boot in before he actually does any praise. So this expression Ivri is often used in Tanakh as a term, a derogatory term. Let's go back to our psukim. And so what do they say? Where are we? Verse 11 again. He says, Hinei Ivrim, these Jews, these disparaging name for the Jews, Yotzim are coming out, min hachorim. They're coming out of the holes. What does that evoke? What picture does that evoke? The Jews are coming out of the holes.
Blood libel?
Yeah, vermin. Yeah, rats coming out of their hiding place.
Yeah, the Black Plague.
Again,
Black Death.
Is a reflexive verb where they have hid themselves. These Jews, these Ivrim, they were hiding. They were hiding in the woodwork. Oh, look, they're coming out. They're coming out of the holes. This whole expression is one of disdain. The Plishtim are being very disdainful, and we know, don't we, from a later story that the Plishtim are a disdainful people towards the Bnei Israel. What story do I have in mind where they are disdainful of the Hebrews, the Plishtim? We will learn it in approximately 3 chapters' time. And those of you who went on the Tiyul last week were there.
David and Goliath?
Yes, David and Goliath. Goliath says, who's going to fight me? And David steps up and Goliath laughs at him and says, what, you? You're just a little kid. Get lost. Give me somebody proper to fight. And he's very mocking. He taunts the Bnei Israel. And if you actually look at the Psukim, which we'll get to eventually in a few months, David says to Shaul, when Shaul says, you can't go, you're just a shepherd. David says, what, you're going to let them taunt us? And he uses that word, I can't remember the exact Lashon now, but it translates as taunting. So the Plishtim here are taunting the Jews. They are very disdainful of it. And what happens, Philip, when you are disdainful of your enemy?
You take a fall.
You take a fall, like Goliath, exactly. So I don't know what I'd do without you today, Philip. So this pasuk here is telling us very clearly the mindset of the Plishtim. So Jonathan, in his asking for this sign, was actually right, wasn't he? By saying, if they invite us up, it will be a sign that they are weak. They are ready for a fall. They are taking life very simply here. They think that they think they've got it beaten, or in famous words, they think it's all over. So it's not, and Jonathan shows us that. So that's verse 11. the Philistines show their psychological weakness here. They think that the Jews are emerging from the holes like rats. Verse 12.
The men of the garrison called out to Jonathan and his armor bearer, saying, "Come up to us, we have something to tell you." Jonathan then said to his armor bearer, "Come up after me, for Hashem has delivered them into the hand of Israel."
Okay, we're going to stop there. So the men of the garrison, the Plishtim, remember these are the guys on the outside. These are the sentries. These are not the leaders of the Plishtim. They would no doubt be inside the garrison. These are the people on sentry duty, and they say to him, "Come up, we've got to tell you. We want to tell you something." What do you think that might be? What might they want to tell? What might they want to tell Jonathan? Anyone? Johnny Halpin, what does Rav Steinsaltz say on that pasuk? You're muted, Johnny. You're muted.
Sorry. The men of the garrison spoke out. They shouted, Rabbi Steinsaltz says, to Jonathan and the armor bearer, and they said, and Rabbi Steinsaltz says, they said it menacingly and scornfully, "Come up to us and we will inform you of something." And he adds, "We will teach you a lesson." Jonathan said to his armor bearer, "Ascend after me, for this is the sign that the Lord has delivered them into the hand of Israel."
So Rav Steinsaltz is interpreting the pasuk in the same way as we are.
Yeah.
They're saying to him scornfully, "Come up and we'll tell you something. We've got something to tell you." And he says, "We'll teach you a lesson." What does that mean in English? We'll teach you a lesson. Come here, I'll teach you a lesson. You've heard that expression before, I'm sure. It means you're going to get a good hiding. And so that's what they were saying. They were scornful of him. Jonathan, on the other hand, recognizes that God is with him, recognizes that God has actually fulfilled the sign that he asked, very much in the same way as Eliezer did. Eliezer's approach to his sign is very much the same as Jonathan's, or I should say the other way around. Jonathan's response is very much like Eliezer's, and he, as it were, acknowledges the sign from God, and he says to his caddy, "Come up with me, alei acharai," not "come up with me." I beg your pardon, I translated that wrongly, and it's important. You'll see next week why it's important. Alei acharai, come up after me, behind me. Come up behind me. Ki natanam Hashem biyad Israel, because Hashem has given them into the hand of Israel. Jonathan is recognizing the sign has been fulfilled. He's confident, and he's going up there to start a battle with the Plishtim. We're going to stop there because we're out of time. Next week, please God, we will see what actually happens in this battle with the Plishtim. What we've seen today is that Jonathan, the hero, and I said it last week, I have the name Jonathan, which is not my Hebrew name. My Hebrew name is Yaakov Tzvi. But I would have been very proud to have carried that name, Yonatan, given the heroism of Yonatan ben Shaul throughout his life, which we see here for the first time here. I do have a grandson called Yoni, so I'm guessing that counts as sort of Yonatan. Yonatan was a great hero, and we're seeing here the first signs of his heroic behavior, and we will continue that Be'ezrat Hashem next week. Any questions or comments regarding what we've done today?
Just going back to the sorcery bit, Johnny, should you not say Mazal Tov to people and say, wish you Mazal? Should that be wrong? Or do some people not even say Mazel Tov?
So when we say Mazel Tov, we're hoping them to have good mazal. Well, you could argue, but you shouldn't, because there is a concept that mazal, the real word of mazal, what does mazal refer to? It, generally speaking, refers to the stars. You know, the constellation of the stars and the astronomy and all that kind of gear. And we say, Ein mazalin li Yisrael. Israel is not dictated to by the mazalim. The star signs are called mazalim, you know, Virgo and all that nonsense, whatever they are. I don't know, not very good, not very well up on those. I only know a few of them. But all those star signs are called mazalim in Hebrew. So when you say Mazal Tov, if your indication is, which it isn't today because it has a different meaning, but if the initial wish is that you should have a good, the stars should look kindly upon you, then you're probably right. You shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
But that's not what it means today, is it? Today we just wish people to congratulate them, to let them know that we are sharing their simcha, wherever it is. We're not really wishing them good luck. You don't, if you, in modern Hebrew, if you said somebody to good luck, you know, they were going to have a test or something, and you would say good luck, you wouldn't say Mazal Tov. What would you say?
Hatzlacha.
Hatzlacha. It should go with success. Hatzlacha is success. So you're wishing them success, which is what we mean when we say good luck. So Mazal Tov may have originated as wishing somebody good constellation in the stars, which would probably not be allowed. It's a very good question. But I think since the usage today is certainly not that, I don't think there would be anybody, well, there probably would be somebody that would forbid it. There's somebody who forbids everything if you look hard enough. But I think most people would say that that was permitted. But I think you're probably right. In its truest, originalist, so good job, Michael Leaf isn't here. There's no such word as originalist. I'm going to say it again anyway. In its originalist form, you probably, nobody's allowed to split on me to Michael. You probably wouldn't be allowed to say that, Johnny. Good question.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions?
Don't let Jonathan Raymond join us next week. 3 Jonathans is enough. A 4th would make it impossible.
Yeah, you're right. You can have too much of a good thing, eh, Leon?
Leon, you're wonderful. Leon, you're great, Leon.
Philip gets a gold star for today's performance.
Yes.
Promote him to general.
Let's not get carried away. Shavuot Tov, everybody.
Shavuot Tov.
Shavuot Tov. See
See you
ya.
all next week
Thank you,
in the
Johnny.
flesh.